and welcome to Archetype Builds. This is the channel where we take a paragon, an archetype, a classic fantasy stereotype, and we show you how to create it for your Dungeons & Dragons character. This week we are going to be looking at the Longbow Archer. So this is one of the most basic fantasy archetypes out there. I think you guys can all think of examples of people in fantasy, drawing back their bowstring and firing from long away from the enemy. It's a very effective playstyle in Dungeons & Dragons. That range is going to help you stay out of your enemy's reach, keep you alive longer, and in general, range damage keeps up very well with melee damage. Avoids things like opportunity attacks, auras, anything else your enemy might be throwing at you. So what are we going to do for our build today? Well, first of all, we want to make sure that we are using the longbow. I think that's the archetypal weapon, and maximizing the value of that weapon. So a longbow is a heavy, two-handed, D8 ranged weapon. It's got the longest range of any weapon in the game, with 150-foot normal range, longer than most, if not all, spell ranges, and a 600-foot kind of extended range, or range with disadvantage, right? This is a range that is colossally larger than most situations in D&D, but it creates the opportunity for you to kind of creatively use these arrows, especially if you know an enemy is coming. Being able to fire from 600 feet away, even with disadvantage, means you'll have turn after turn of that enemy approaching while you're getting to it. And that's part of the core fantasy of the Longbow Archer. Being able to fire from a long distance away and hit your opponent. I also want to be able to fit not only standard archers, like, let's say, Legolas from Lord of the Rings, but also these kind of newer archers, like Hawkeye and Green Arrow, who have kind of specialty arrows for certain situations. So let's see what we can do. For your ability scores, dexterity is king for this build. All of our archery is going to be based off of dexterity, and so you want to make sure that that's the highest possible. You're also going to want to keep a reasonably high intelligence. Maybe look into like a 14 for this. Constitution is luckily less important here because we will be so far away, but never bad to have a decent Constitution score. So there is a feat which is an absolutely critical staple of all major range damage builds. It's called Sharpshooter. You'll probably see it on other channels talking about ranged damage. It's extremely good. Like its Great Weapon Master counterpart, it's going to allow you to add 10 damage to a hit at the penalty of -5 to hit. Particularly with ranged combat, our bonuses to hit are going to be pretty good. So this is a very good trade-off for us. My recommendation would be using one of the custom lineage options that'll give you a feat at first level and taking that sharpshooter feat. This means not choosing an elf, but also when you think about ranged archers in fantasy, typically speaking, an elf will come to mind. So if you want to choose elf, no worries. That means at level 4, you're going to want to choose the sharpshooter feat, and then everything's just going to be staggered a little bit. For our equipment, of course, archery does require ammunition, which is sort of the drawback to the bonus of not being close to danger. So you are going to want to just load up on as much ammunition as you can, continuing to load up at centers. Some DMs don't track ammunition or require you to track ammunition. If you know ahead of time you've got one of those, great. But it's still good sportsmanship to grab as many arrows as you can because you will be shooting a lot of times. So for our class, archery falls into one of these kind of more mundane fighting types, right? We're not adding magic to this yet. And so we are going to want to choose the king of standard everyday fighting, the fighter. Don't forget here at level 1 fighter to pick up the Archery fighting style. That's going to add +2 to all of our attack rolls with ranged weapons, which is by far the best fighting style in the game if you're going to be ranged. So grab that fighter level 1. Level 2 is going to bring you that action surge, which is great stuff. And then we are going to go fighter level 3 and choose our fighter subclass here. There are a variety of fighter subclasses, and many of them can make very good archers, but only one of them is going to give us the ability to do those trick arrows like a Hawkeye or like a green arrow. And so we are going to go into the Arcane Archer subclass. Arcane Archer is going to give us cantrip, which is always useful. It's also going to allow us to choose 2 arcane shots. And these arcane shots are flavored as magical effects we place on our arrows. They don't have to be flavored that way. You can flavor these like the trick arrows that Hawkeye brings into battle. You can flavor these as your own special inventions that you're adding to this. Flavor them however you feel is appropriate for the character. The subclass says these are magical, and as a result, the spell saves for your arrows are going to depend on your intelligence, which is why we kept that stat high. For our arcane shot selection, the first one I'm going to recommend is actually the ensnaring arrow. As fun as bursting or exploding arrow would be, I can't recommend ensnaring arrow enough because of the possible damage output and the situationally appropriate mitigation on our weakness, which is, of course, if an enemy gets close to us, we have disadvantage on attacks within 5 feet of us with a ranged weapon. Since we're going all in on archery, that means we are more or less powerless. So we want to be firing this arrow at enemies who look like they're headed towards us. The side benefit is going to be, because this arrow does damage each round that the enemy is running towards us, it's going to be by far, in a way, more damage overall than any other arcane arrow possibility. So this one arcane shot will be the best bang for your buck, both in terms of keeping you alive and in terms of wiping out a potential enemy. The other arrow that I'm going to recommend is the Banishing Arrow. This is your emergency press big red button if a big bad guy does get close to you and you look like you're in a world of trouble. Banishing Arrow is going to make that person banished for 1 round, right? Essentially, they are taking out of the situation while you do things like run away, get to shelter, maybe even set an ambush for them at that point. And then at the end of the round, they're going to come back. You could flavor this for a mundane version as like a freezing arrow or a paralysis arrow, something that locks them in place so that they can't move or do anything, and then they break out of that ice at the end of the round. For level 4, if you do have that sharpshooter feat, then what you're going to want to do is continue to bump dexterity. Even though our arcane shots are based off of intelligence, dexterity is what we're using for most of our attack rolls. So continue to bump this up. If you have not taken a sharpshooter at level 1, maybe to go elf or some other race that you thought was appropriate, you want to take sharpshooter here. Must have for an archery build. Level 5 is going to be that extra attack as normal. And then our proficiency bonus, of course, is going up. So you are quite a mean fighting archery machine. I'm going to say it's at this level that this build is like fully online. You're feeling like the badass archer with your bag of tricks for when you need it. Proceeding to level 6, I'm going to take this build in the direction of continuing to go Arcane Archer. This is not going to multi-class at all. So for 6, I think what we're going to do here is, as we're proceeding fighter, this is another ability score increase or feat. If we haven't already, let's go ahead and cap our dexterity. If you rolled for stats, maybe you've had the pleasure of already getting this. I think capping dexterity is super, super helpful. And I would do that here at level 6. You might be a step behind from taking kind of a different race at the beginning. Totally fine. You're going to get another ability score increaser feat, right, at level 8, so there are plenty to spare. If you are dealing with a situation where you just so happen to have an odd numbered dexterity score, and you want to round it out for that same bonus as if you were to add 2 to it, I would recommend the Piercer feat if you've already got Sharpshooter and have an odd dexterity score. The Piercer feat is going to add some minor fringe benefits, like rerolling 1s and 2s on damage die, but overall that is going to be rather helpful because all of our damage is piercing damage, right? So, if you think of 2 attacks per turn, every single combat, that's a lot of attacks where we could be potentially getting a little bit more damage, potentially getting crits and re-rolling an extra die with that Piercer feat. Level 7. Absolutely love the level 7 features here for Arcane Archer. Makes us go from a very competent archer to absolute powerhouse on the battlefield. First up, Magic Arrow, which for those of you who don't know, many monsters in D&D have resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage from non-magical weapons. Some even have immunity to it, against which we would be mostly powerless. We'd have to blow an arcane shot. Now, all of our arrows are considered magical for the purposes of overcoming immunities and resistances, which is amazing. And so that's just going to happen automatically. If we are the one who fired the arrow, it's magical. Great stuff. The other thing that we're going to get is the ability to try and make a miss into a hit. Here's what we read. At 7th level, you learn how to direct an errant arrow towards a new target. When you make an attack roll with a magic arrow and miss, you can use a bonus action to re-roll the attack against a different target within 60 feet of the original, which is super, super awesome. So what this means is every turn we're going to take those 2 attacks. If either of them miss, we can bonus action to redirect the attack at another target. This means we have a very, very high chance of hitting both of our attacks each turn because our bonuses are so high to archery. Our dexterity is maxed. We are going to be coming up on that proficiency bonus to 4, plus our archery fighting style means we're adding over 10 to each hit. Even with Sharpshooter, it's a plus 6. So your first try, if it misses, you get a second try as a bonus action. If the curving arrow feature wasn't enough at level 7, in addition to Magic Arrow, we are also going to get another Arcane Shot option. So here's where I'm going to recommend, once again, instead of choosing the fun bursting arrow, we choose something that is going to help us in strategies where we are at a disadvantage. Specifically, we're very good against melee opponents because they are very far away from us and we can shoot them without any issues. If they try and get close to us, we can use our ensnaring or entangling arrow to slow them down and do a lot of damage to them as they get close. If they ambush us, we can banish them. We're good on melee targets. Those aren't the only sorts of targets in the game. Many of the enemies that you could fight in D&D have both ranged or even spell casting options that they can cast from range. So, what are we going to do against these guys? Well, obviously, shoot them. But more specifically, we can take the shadow arrow, and this is going to blind opponents. It is especially useful against people who are using ranged attacks because almost always those are going to need to see the target, and most spells specify that you can only target someone that you can see. So blinding them with Shadow Arrow is going to be this incredible boost in situations where enemy ranged attackers or spellcasters are at play, and this is going to give us the upper hand in our ranged archery combat. Level 8, if your dexterity is capped, then congratulations. I think the next most important thing to do is to reach for that intelligence ASI. Intelligence, of course, is going to increase the spell save for all of our arcane arrows, which is great. You also might choose to go for the mobile feat. The mobile feat is going to allow you to kind of run away without taking an opportunity attack if an enemy does get close to you. You do have disadvantage on enemies within 5 feet, so this could be the difference between, a hit or a miss, and that might be really important to you. I do think it's kind of expensive to expend an entire feat in that direction, but if that works for your playstyle, then go for it. I think another good option, right, is the alert feat. I think that's generally good on lots of characters, not specific to the Longbow Archer, but I did want to give that a call out here. Level 9, we're going to get Indomitable. Lets us reroll a saving throw if we fail. Great. All right, here we are at the end of the build already. Level 10, we are just going to get a 4th arcane shot option. And what I'm going to say here is this is like the capstone for this build. We could choose bursting arrow. We could. In fact, you can and should if you are really jonesing for a bursting shot arrow. But I'm going to recommend and put on my character sheet the seeking arrow. The reason why is because this is just like the ultimate pinnacle of ranged combat and ranged precision. The seeking arrow can make its way to any target that you have seen in the last minute within range of your weapon. And you use the larger range for this. So with a longbow, that's 600 feet. I mean, there's no map that your DM is ever going to put out there that has 600 feet as the range. It's really incredible. I think that you can also completely ignore partial or total cover. So if they are like behind a wall or behind a tree or something like that, just cowering for their life, this arrow will seek them out. You could certainly flavor this magically. I think the idea is the arrow takes on a life of its own and flies around corners and stuff like that. But I'm actually going to flavor this for my non-magical archer as a ricocheting arrow, bouncing off different surfaces to finally reach the target who's hiding behind that wall over there. Absolutely amazing stuff. Being able to like pull out your bow, aim, and just pew, 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 and strike a target in a bush hiding 500 feet away. I mean, how much cooler can you get? All right, thanks everybody for watching. Right when the channel is getting started, I think this is the best time to give feedback. So let me know what you thought of the build, what you think of the channel and our approach. We really appreciate everybody who's out there watching, and I can't wait to keep making another one of these. See ya.